morning, everybody. All right. Well, we're going to turn in our Bibles again today in the book of Deuteronomy. And we will start with chapter 22. Finished up 21, of course, last week. And I hope you can bear with me. I know a lot of this is rules and laws revisited that were stated in Leviticus. And even though we're in the age of grace, these rules and laws that God established for His people at this point in time in history, I think if you study on it in your mind, sit and think about it through the week or something, I think it would dawn on you over time that it was necessary. And man needs some rules and regulations and laws, even today. I think if left to his own devices without any guidance, I think we could see probably it may end up as it were in the days of Noah. And we know what happened at that point in time. God flooded the world. And it didn't take too long as you read through the Bible, God's holy word, that, by the time Abraham comes on the scene, Sodom and Gomorrah had already festered into probably one of the worst places on the planet. And we know how God felt about that and what He did to that. And now you've got God's people, and He selected Abraham, and he's kind of the father of God's people. And he spent some time in Egypt. And, when Jacob and Joseph was down in Egypt, the Pharaoh accepted them, welcomed them in, because Joseph had a dream and provided, help for 7 years, prepared for 7 years of famine. So as we read in our Bible, God is going to have some rules and tells these people to remember, how they were bondmen down in Egypt, so it weren't all bad. We know Egypt's a sign of sin. They ended up turning on them, but it wasn't as bad as what they were about to run into when they crossed the Jordan. And God is preparing these people for this trip into Jordan. And they're going to face some real evil in this land. And I think this is why God is giving them these rules, telling them to obey him, and they will be blessed. And do the things that He says, and they will prosper. But if they just went in there on their own free will and had no rules as given by Moses to them, I think we could see they would have been corrupted worse than what ends up anyway. We'll see that. But as time goes on with the nation. But us just wanted to bring that God foreknew what was going to happen to them and what they're going to be exposed to, and how quickly they can be corrupted. I mean, we saw that not many chapters back when Balaam gave advice to King Amalek on how to corrupt them, and he couldn't defeat them, but he could take action that corrupted them and caused problems. So, that's where these people are at. They're going into a new land, and there's practices that are bad and evil in that land. And if they don't watch it, they will get entangled up in that as well. And so here's the rules Moses is giving them right before his death, preparing them. Just as we have the Word of God today to read and study, it tells you what you need to take care of yourself and live right. It's there. And these words, although it was a different time and place and different rules, it was there for their benefit. All right, so chapter 22, of course. As we read some of these, the world view on some of the rules or regulations or law that we read in this book of Deuteronomy, it would be controversial today. It would be bad. It's conflict. It'd be really. But as I look at most of the stuff in here, I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing wrong. I think it was a hard time, and it required hard rules and a hard line for these people to survive. because Canaan, parts of it, had nothing but death and corruption waiting for them. And we'll see that as we progress. All right, I'm going to read verses 1 through 4 of chapter 22 first. I thought I had it turned to it there. 21. There it is. All right. Thou shalt not see thy brother's ox or his sheep go astray, and hide thyself from them. Thou shalt in any case bring them again unto thy brother. And if thy brother be not nigh unto thee, or if thou know him not, then shalt thou bring it unto thine own house, and it shall be with thee until thy brother seek after it, and thou shalt restore it to him again. Verse 3, in like manner shalt thou do with his donkey, as so shalt thou do with his raiment, clothing, with all the lost things of thy brother, which he hath lost and has found. Shalt do likewise, thou mayest not hide thyself. Verse 4, thou shalt not see thy brother's donkey or his ox fall down by the way, and hide thyself from them. Thou shalt surely help him to lift them up again. His brother, that's not just like brother, but that's his fellow Israelites in that land, of course. And it's boiled down is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, don't take advantage of them. Help them. Look after their stuff. Lost and found portion of this is take care of it till it could be returned. Don't abuse it, discard it, tear it up, hide it, or something. So just some little basic common sense rules right there. Like I said, do unto others, you'd have them do unto you. I'm going to read verse 5 now. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. Like I said, controversial, of course, and God made men and women different for a reason. God made them where they could be, you could tell them apart. Shouldn't cause confusion. And what God's telling them in this land where they're going, they need to keep it according to God's way here. Don't do like they're doing in Canaan. That's where this stuff, what's old is new. They ain't nothing under the sun that God ain't seen. This was already going on in Canaan. So Moses is warning them, this is what's going on over there now. Don't succumb to it. That's what he's telling them. So he's giving them a fair warning. All right, verses 6 through 7. If a bird's nest chance to be before thee in the way in any tree or on the ground, whether they be young ones or eggs, and the dam, that's the mother bird, sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, thou shalt not take the mother with the young. But thou shalt in any wise let the mother bird go, and take the young to thee, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest prolong thy days. You know, that's pretty much common sense there. Look after things now to prolong yourself and the animals that you see. It's not that hard a scenario. Like I said, it's common sense. If you use everything up, even to the point where it's created and it brings forth life, and you destroy that, you're destroying it and yourself in the long run. So common sense. All right. Now I'm going to read verse 8. When thou buildest a new house, then thou shalt make a battlement for thy roof. And that's just like I can call it a guardrail around the top of the roof. Now, those roofs back in those days in those places, even now, some of them are flat roofs. You'll see that if you see it on TV. But that thou bring not blood upon thine house if any man fall from thence. And from what I read and understand and have seen, in that type of society over there, the flat roofs with the rail around it where they spent a lot of time up there. They had access to the roof, and it could be used for various things. Food preservation is one. Let's see what I got. Sleeping, they would do that at night because it was cooler at night up with the breeze, than being inside. Cooking, and of course, like I said, food preservation, using the sun to dry it. So just another common sense rule. Read verses 9 through 11. All right. Thou shalt not sow thy vineyard by divers seeds. That's different. Lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled or corrupted. Thou shalt not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Again, common sense. Thou shalt not wear a garment of divers sorts, different sorts as of woolen and linen together. Yeah, all right, that was it. Now, what I discovered there on that, seed mixed with other weaker plant strains causes bad plant reproduction. Plow a weaker animal, one stronger and weaker than another, mixing them up like that, you're not going to be very productive in that aspect. And the one I found was funny is a garment, even ones of different, wool and etc. Cotton has different properties, so when you wash it, it shrinks at different levels and it just makes it wear out quicker. So there again, common sense rules and items. Now I'm going to read verse 12. Thou shalt make thee fringes upon the four quarters of thy vesture, wherewith thou coverest thyself. Reminder to obey God's commandments. That was something that was a symbol on the garments. It would bring to their mind that they were to obey God's commandments, and thus they being blessed. 13 through 19. If any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her, verse 14, and give occasions of speech against her, and bring up an evil name upon her, and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not as a maid. Then shalt the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens. That's a evidence. Now, like I said, these were different times, different people, and these are evidence of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city gate. And the evidence would be taken to the elders at the city gate. Why? That's where we say they kind of hold court. That's where decisions are made within the community. And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hateth her. And lo, he hath given occasion of speech against her. He's talking bad and saying that's what the agreement was. It's not true. Saying, I found not thy daughter at maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city, and the elders of the city shall take that man and chastise him. And they shall immerse him in 100 shekels of silver, and give them unto the father of the damsel, because he has brought an evil name upon a virgin of Israel, and she shall be his wife. He may not put her away all his days. So, loose speech, a loose tongue, and making comments and statements back in those days was taken seriously. And in that particular subject, there was a practice that they followed to ensure that there was evidence at the time when the marriage first occurred. And this could be taken to the elders when a husband got loose with his tongue and making comments like that. And the elders, of course, would rule and make a decision. And these topics, they're kind of hard to understand, but I made some notes here. Obviously, this topic is important to God then as they go into this land. Marriage and the activities that go with marriage was sacred and created a bond between husband and wife, and it didn't need to start off like this. That's why these practices were, I feel like they were put forth and established. And our false accusers are just bad witnesses, and they should be punished accordingly. So with that being said, the shekels of silver came in. So we'll move on to verses 22 through 29, okay? If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die. Of course, that's adultery. That's one of the 10 Commandments. Then thou shalt both of them, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman, so shalt thou put away evil from Israel. And verse 23, if a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto a husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then ye shall bring them both out unto the gate of that city, and ye shall stone them with stones that they die. The damsel, because she cried not, being in the city, and the man, because hath humbled his neighbor's wife, so that thou shalt put away evil from among you. But if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death, for as when a man rises against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the field, and betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her. So she cried out for help, but nobody was around to hear. And if a man findeth that is a virgin which is not betrothed, that's not engaged, and lay hold on her and lie with her, and they be found, the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her, and he may not put her away all of his day. So he's going to have to marry her. And what comes to my mind back is Jacob's daughter, and I think it was, I cannot remember his name, but I'm sure you guys remember when she was forced into a relationship. And then the brothers went forth and executed judgment on the town. And so there again, these rules, it was important to God and important enough for Moses to review these. And such actions, immoral activities, only led to social disorder and problems within the community. And that's what they were going to be facing in Canaan when they get there with some of these tribes. People who had no rules and had no regard for other human beings, and bad to the strangers. We saw that in Sodom. They had no feelings toward the strangers. We know that because the way they treated the angels when they got to Sodom. And I fear that's where this communities were going as well, just in the steps. We know the whole world was corrupt by the time of Noah, so it's not a far-fetched stretch to think that's where this area was headed. And if it had not been for these people and the battles that went forth, I think it would have been sped up. And if it hadn't been for David, man after God's own heart, he even had his role in trying to extinguish some of these. God used them as tools. So, all right. So now I'll read verse 30 and finish up that chapter. A man shall not take his father's wife, nor discover his father's skirt. Another immoral activity, unfortunately. That's what they would have found in Canaan. Such activities is going on, such as that. So there's not to marry stepmothers, relations with the father's wife, or any violation of the father's marital status was not to be done. And there again, that's the kind of stuff that was going on in the land in which they're headed. Chapter 23, some more religious regulations. I'll read verses 1 through 6. He that is wounded in the stones or hath his privy member cut off shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. The Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever, because they met you not with bread and with water in the way. This is the reasoning why, if you'll remember back, it ain't been that long ago we read this. When you came forth out of Egypt, when the Israelites left Egypt, and because they hired against thee Balaam, the son of Beor, of Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse thee. Nevertheless, the Lord thy God would not hearken unto Balaam, but the Lord thy God turned the curse into a blessing upon thee, because the Lord thy God loved thee. Thou shalt not seek their peace nor their prosperity all days forever. All right, so a little bit to unpack there. Male rules, eunuchs and emasculated individuals at this time were being found in Canaan. This was part of the practices that were going on. This is more immoral activity that they're to watch out for and not to succumb to, not to be copied by God's people. They were not to be doing this kind of stuff. It is thought this, all right. And the Moabite and the Amorites, because of their treatment of Israel. If you remember, the Moabites, part of Balak, we talked about that, and y'all remember that. And the Amorites, if you remember, they denied God's people access. So, although they weren't wiped out, they're still remembered to be. There's a warning there for them. Don't. There again, they're not to be like those people as well. And they just didn't treat them right when they come into the land. And I think they were also descendants of Lot, if I remember right. We talked about that. So they're kind of close cousins. I think that's how it went. Okay. Now I'm going to read verses 7 and 8. Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because that was a stranger in his land. The children that are begotten of them still enter the congregation of the Lord in their third generation, when the host goeth forth against thine enemies. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of uncleanness, and that goes back to previous books we read about the laws regarding clean and unclean, those who've been exposed to death, etc., and they had to be cleansed before they could do certain things. Chanceth him by night, then shall he go abroad out of the camp, he shall not come within the camp. All right? But it shall be, when evening come out, he shall wash himself with water, and when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again. Thou shalt have a place also without the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be, when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. For the Lord thy God walketh in the midst of the camp, to deliver thee, and to give thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy, that he see no unclean thing in thee, and turn away from thee. And I know these verses like, wow, what's that got to? But it's you got to remember, when they went to war, they were not going to win these battles on their own accord. God has told them, and we've seen when they ran up the hill with all of them to try to make things right with God, either they didn't listen to him, they were utterly defeated. But when they done things the way God told them to do it, and put their faith in him to win the battles, not themselves, they won. So these rules about clean and unclean, for God's presence, to God to walk with them, to be with them in these battle situations, he put forth rules in the way they were supposed to behave. And frankly, some of these rules are just good common sense. When you got a large group of people together, sanitation is key, especially in battles. Back in this time, you had a bunch of men in camp together outside with no sanitation systems, and if they just done anything, they would be wiped out of their own accord with disease and sickness. So that's just common sense. But the main thing is that for them, they needed to be clean, follow God's rules, cleanness, where God would be with his presence would be in their camp. And we'll see their rules, it wasn't a number of men that mattered when they went out to battle. Because we just read last week, certain things were going on in men's lives that they didn't have to go be the part of the battle. If they had a new home, they had a new wife, certain things, a new garden, a new vineyard, etc. like that, they were excused from the battle at that time. And that works if their confidence and their faith in God was 100%. God was going to be with them. They didn't need all them men there. You'll see that in the upcoming book of Judges when we talk about Gideon. And we read about Gideon. If God's in the camp with them, his presence is with them, every man, woman, and child don't need to be there to fight the battles. I think as we progress through the Bible, we'll see some of the most miraculous. We saw it in the Red Sea. Let's just do like Moses does and say, just go back and see the Red Sea. See what happened. God did the work for them. Pharaoh was going to wipe them out. And we're going to see that in the future as well. And so that's where we're at there. All right, got 9 through 14. Now I read 15 through 16. Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from the master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you, in that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates, where it is liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. All right. Of course, this is not an Israelite. They weren't to enslave each other, make service. I mean, they could do. We read about where they could be a servant for them, but it wasn't a forced situation. They were choose to do so to pay back a loan, etc. This was more like someone who they've conquered, a Canaanite, etc. Verses 17 and 18. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. Thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord thy God for any vow, for even both these are abomination unto the Lord. Again, this is moral decay that they're going to find when they go into Canaan. These are practices that are not socially good. Although it goes on every day, I think anybody can read and see what the results to a society is when this stuff goes on. Increased drug use, increased murder, this poor behavior overall, and this is what they had to stay away from. Because you remember, Balaam gave the advice to the king. He puts the bad females out near the camp. What did the men do? They went out there and had relations with them, and it caused a turmoil and strife within the camp right then. And Phineas had to take care of it, made an example of it. So it's moral decay is what God's warning about here. All right. Let's see. No male or female prostitution, and no proceeds from such activity was to be used as an offering. And that reference to the dog is a male prostitute. Just some notes I didn't get there. 19 and 20. Protection for the weak. And, the weak or the stranger. I mean, this brings back my thoughts to Sodom when we get here. It keeps coming back to my mind. The men that went into Lot's house were angels. But when they went into that city, they were strangers. And we see how they would have been treated had Lot put them outside the door. So this is important to God, the protection of the weak and the stranger. All right? Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, which is collateral, collateral victuals, or not that, it's, I'm working on it, guys. Interest. I can say interest easier than I can say usury. All right. Thou shalt not lend interest to thy brother, interest of money, and interest of victuals, interest of anything that is lent upon the credit system. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that settest thine hand to in the land, whether thou goest to possess it. All right. So no high interest loans is what that boils down to. And of course these victuals are food and, not victuals, it's victuals is how they pronounce it. I keep doing that. But anyway, that is just food, interest upon food. And it's just not to take advantage of your brother by loaning him something and charging him so much interest and and maybe he can't even ever pay it back. That's no way to run a society. That's no way to do things with their own people. You're not giving nobody any, and they're offering to pay it back anyway. So why be greedy about it and try to get them in a shape where they'll never overcome? So there again, more social decay. Now I read 21 through 23. When thou shalt vow a vow unto the Lord thy God, thou shalt not slack to pay it. For the Lord thy God will surely require it of thee, and it would be a sin in thee. And also vice versa. Not to take advantage of people with high interest loans, but also if you borrow money, pay it back. All right. 22, but if thou shalt forbear to vow, it shall be no sin in thee. And that's the refrain. If thou shalt refrain to vow. That which is gone out of thy lips thou shalt keep and perform, even a freewill offering according as thou hast vowed to the Lord thy God, which thou hast promised with thy mouth. So promises, the simple way or a long way of saying promises are to be kept. All right. Now read 24 and 25. We're going to finish it. When thou comest into thy neighbor's vineyard, then thou mayest eatest grapes thine fill at thine own pleasure, but thou shalt not put any in thy vessel. And when thou comest into the standing corn of thy neighbor, then thou mayest pluck the ears with thine hand, but thou shalt not move a sickle into the neighbor's standing corn. And that's common sense there. Somebody's got a crop, and a traveler could stop in and eat a handful of it to keep his strength up and go on, but don't steal it, the whole crop. That's kind of like the story of the goose that laid the golden egg. Don't get more than you need there. And if you'll remember back in the book of Matthew, chapter 12, Jesus gives David as an example. Remember the showbread, when David ate the showbread? So God didn't strike David down for that. And remember when Jesus and the disciples stopped and pulled corn, of course the Pharisees and the Sadducees and those type of people pointed out, thou shalt not eat on the Sabbath, you violated. But the big thing is over here, remembering that, God sets more value in mercy over legalism. And that's why Jesus and the disciples was okay with it, and David was okay with it at that time. I'll dismiss us with a prayer. God, I